The Montana Territory stretched vast and unforgiving in every direction, a landscape that made small things of human ambition. Cole Hartley had learned to read its moods the way other men read newspapers. The angle of afternoon light across the grasslands, the particular quality of silence before a storm, the way dust devils formed and dissolved like the hopes he had long since stopped entertaining. He stood at the edge of his property, Blackwater Ranch, watching the sun descend toward the mountains. The land here was his 300 acres of grass and stone and endless sky, purchased with money saved from a life he no longer claimed. A life that had ended 3 years ago in a Wyoming town whose name he tried not to remember. The ranch house sat in a shallow valley, sheltered from the worst winds by cottonwoods on one side and rising ground on the other. Log construction solid if unadorned, a stone chimney, a covered porch where he sometimes sat and counted the ways his past might catch him. The barn stood nearby, weathered but sound. Beyond his cattle scattered across the grazing land, moving slowly in their eternal search for better grass. Cole was 32 years old. He looked older. The frontier had a way of aging men, writing its harsh lessons into the lines around their eyes, the set of their shoulders, the careful way they moved through the world. He wore his isolation like armor, keeping the town of Benson Creek at a distance, making the 18-mile journey only when supplies demanded it. Tonight, as twilight gathered, he walked down to the spring-fed pool where water bubbled clear and cold from the ground. This was his ritual, this quiet hour between day and night, when the world held its breath and a man could pretend he was the only soul for 100 miles. He knelt by the water. His reflection stared back at him, distorted by the ripples. Dark hair longer than it should be. Eyes that had seen too much. A face that belonged to someone else, someone who had once worn a badge and believed in justice. The memory came unbidden, as it always did. The sound of gunfire. A man falling. Blood spreading across wooden floorboards. Marcus Brennan dying with surprise in his eyes, unable to comprehend that anyone would dare stand against him. Cole spoke to the reflection, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Marcus." The words were habit now, a prayer to a ghost who would never grant absolution. Cole had killed Marcus Brennan in the performance of his duty, had pulled the trigger to save a young woman being held at knife point, but the law had not seen it that way. Marcus's family, wealthy and connected, had painted a different picture. Deputy U.S. Marshal Cole Hartley, they said, had murdered an innocent businessman over a personal grudge. The trial never happened. Cole had received warning from a fellow marshal, a man named Tom, who understood that justice and law were not always the same thing. "Disappear," Tom had written. "They are coming for you. Marcus's family has connections that reach further than you can run, but try anyway." So Cole had become someone else. He had buried his badge beneath the floorboards of this cabin, locked away the newspaper clippings that detailed his supposed crimes, and built a life of silence and solitude. He checked the perimeter of his property every night, setting small traps that would alert him to intruders. He slept with a Winchester rifle within arm's reach. He trusted no one. The sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. Cole brushed dirt from his knees and walked back toward the house. Tomorrow he would ride into Benson Creek. The matrimonial agent Howard Brennan had sent word 3 weeks ago that a woman was arriving on the May stage, a mail-order bride seeking placement. Cole had not wanted a wife. He had responded to the advertisement in a moment of weakness, a night when the loneliness had pressed too hard and the silence had become unbearable. He had written a single letter describing his ranch without embellishment. 300 acres, a 2-room cabin, livestock that mostly survived the winters. A man who had grown more comfortable with silence than conversation. He had not expected a response. When one came, he had almost burned it unopened, but something had stayed his hand. Perhaps it was the neat handwriting on the envelope. Perhaps it was the desperate hope that he could build something normal, something clean, something untouched by the blood on his past. Now, standing in his cabin as darkness filled the valley, Cole pulled the letter from his coat pocket and read it again. "Mr. Hartley, your correspondence has been forwarded to a young woman seeking immediate placement. She requires discretion and distance from her current circumstances. The arrangement, if you choose to proceed, would benefit both parties. She will arrive on the 15th of May. Yours in service, Howard Brennan. Brennan Matrimonial Agency, Helena. The letter told him nothing about the woman. No name, no description, no explanation of what circumstances required discretion and distance. Cole had written back asking for more information. No response had come. He folded the letter carefully and returned it to his pocket. Tomorrow would bring answers, or more questions. In his experience, the frontier offered far more of the latter. The stage was late. It was always late, but today the delay felt personal, as though the universe itself questioned the wisdom of what he had done. Cole stood outside the territorial office in Benson Creek, a town too stubborn to die, despite having little reason to live. 23 buildings in all, if you counted the half-collapsed livery at the edge of town. The other men loitering along the boardwalk cast curious glances his way. Cole Hartley, the recluse of Blackwater Ranch, waiting for a bride like some lovesick fool. He could feel their speculation, their judgment, and beneath it, the particular cruelty of small-town entertainment. His jaw tightened. Let them look. This was business, nothing more. A practical arrangement between two adults seeking mutual benefit. The lie tasted bitter even in his thoughts. Stage is coming. The shout came from young Timothy Brooks, who spent his days watching the horizon for anything that might break the monotony. The boy pointed east, where dust rose against the pale sky. Cole's heart kicked hard against his ribs. He forced his breathing steady, called upon the same discipline that got him through blizzards and cattle drives and the particular loneliness of mountain winters. The stagecoach rounded the bend wheels, churning up pale dirt the driver's calls to his team, carrying across the still air. Cole moved to the edge of the street, aware of the growing audience, hating every second of exposure. The coach rocked to a stop, brake pads shrieking, horses blowing hard from the climb up from the valley. The driver, a weathered man named Sykes, who had been running this route for 15 years, climbed down with the stiffness of someone who had spent too long in a hard seat. He caught Cole's eye, and something passed between them, a look Cole could not quite read. Walker Sykes said, his voice carefully neutral, "Got a passenger for you." Before Cole could respond, the coach door opened. A hand emerged first. Small, feminine, steady. Then a boot-worn but serviceable feeling for the step. And finally, the woman herself. Time performed strange tricks in that moment. Cole would later remember it as both instantaneous and endless, a single second that contained multitudes. She was smaller than he had imagined, though he realized he had imagined nothing concrete, just a vague female shape to fill the empty spaces of his life. She wore a traveling dress of dark blue calico dusty from the journey and a bonnet with a veil that obscured her face. She stepped fully into the street and the veil shifted. Cole's breath caught. She was not beaten. There were no bruises darkening her jawline, no swollen eye, no split lip. Her face was smooth, pale, composed, beautiful in a way that suggested careful breeding and Eastern refinement. Her eyes, visible now through the veil, were a clear gray, intelligent and assessing. But something was wrong. Cole felt it in his gut, that instinct honed by years of reading people, of separating truth from performance. She held herself with rigidity that spoke not of pain carefully managed, but of control deliberately maintained. Her hands, clutching a worn carpet bag, were steady. Too steady for someone who had traveled alone across half a continent. Their eyes met. Hers were calculating, measuring him with the precision of someone evaluating a horse for purchase. Not afraid, not desperate, just watchful. "Mr. Walker." Her voice was soft, cultured, utterly at odds with her surroundings. Eastern, he thought. Massachusetts, perhaps, or Connecticut. The kind of voice that had known better things than dust and frontier violence. "Miss Harper." He removed his hat. "I'm Cole Hartley. Eleanor." She descended the final step with perfect grace. "Eleanor Ashford, though I suppose I should use Harper now, as that was the name on the application." The admission caught him off guard. Using a false name suggested intention planning. This was not a woman fleeing in panic. This was someone executing a strategy. Silence stretched between them, filled with unasked questions. Cole was aware of the spectacle they made the hermit rancher and the mysterious Eastern woman acting out some scene the town would discuss for weeks. Sykes approached, carrying her trunk. The ease with which he lifted it suggested it did not contain much. "Where you want this, Walker?" "The wagon." Cole gestured to where his buckboard stood hitched to two patient draft horses. Eleanor spoke without looking away from Cole. "Mr. Walker, before we proceed, I need to know something." "What's that?" "Are you a man of your word?" The question hung in the air between them. Cole studied her face, searching for the real question beneath the spoken one. "I am." "Good. Then I will be direct. I am here because I have nowhere else to go. I require sanctuary, not ceremony. I will work for my place. I will not be a burden, but I need your word that you will not ask questions I am not prepared to answer." Cole felt the weight of her gaze, the steel beneath her composure. This was not what he had expected, not what the matrimonial agent's vague letter had suggested. "You're in some kind of trouble," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, the kind that follows yes." He should turn her away, should put her back on that stage and forget she had ever arrived. Taking in a stranger trailing danger was the kind of foolishness that got men killed on the frontier. But standing there in the dust of Benson Creek, watching this woman wait for judgment with her chin raised and her hands steady, Cole found the decision had already made itself. "All right," he said quietly. "You'll have sanctuary, and I won't ask questions. But you need to understand something. What my ranch is a day's ride north of here. It's remote, it's rough. And if your trouble comes looking, it will find both of us. So, whatever you're running from, I need to know it's worth the risk." Eleanor studied him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. "It is." They loaded her trunk and began the journey north. The ride took them out of Benson Creek and into country that grew wilder with each passing mile. The road, if the rutted track could be called such, wound through grassland dotted with sage and wildflowers just beginning to show color. Mountains rose in the distance, still capped with snow, despite spring's arrival. Eleanor sat beside him on the wagon seat, silent, her hands folded in her lap. She had removed the veil once they had left town, and Cole could see her face clearly now in the unforgiving sunlight. She was perhaps 24 or 25, with dark brown hair pinned beneath her bonnet and features that spoke of good breeding and better education. But it was her eyes that held his attention, gray clear and completely unreadable. They reminded him of winter ice on a mountain lake, beautiful and dangerous and concealing unfathomable depths. "There's a canteen under the seat," he said after an hour of silence. "Water's fresh from this morning." She retrieved it, drank sparingly, replaced it. "Thank you. You need to stop, you say so. There's no hurry." She nodded but said nothing. The silence was not uncomfortable exactly, but it was heavy with unspoken things. Cole kept his attention on the horses on the road, on anything but the woman beside him, carrying secrets like stones in her pockets. Questions crowded his mind. Who was she running from? What had driven her west? Why had the matrimonial agent been so vague in his correspondence? But he had given his word. No question she was not prepared to answer. They stopped once at a creek crossing where the horses could drink. Cole unhitched them, let them graze while he checked the wagon wheels. Eleanor stood at the water's edge, staring at her reflection in the clear current. After a long moment, she spoke. "You're younger than I expected." Cole straightened, and better armed. She turned to face him, and for the first time, something like amusement touched her eyes. "You noticed. Hard to miss someone studying my gun like they're deciding whether I know how to use it." "Do you?" "Yes." "Good." She returned her gaze to the water. "I have been around too many men who carried weapons they did not understand. It rarely ended well." Cole wanted to ask what she meant, but the words died in his throat. Instead, he said, "Montana's not kind to careless people. Neither is Boston." So that was where she was from. Cole filed the information away. They reached Blackwater Ranch as the sun lowered toward the mountains. Eleanor said nothing as he pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the cabin, but Cole saw her take in the surroundings with those calculating eyes. The isolation, the roughness, the sheer distance from anything resembling civilization. "It's not much," he said, "but it's sound. Roof doesn't leak. Chimney draws well." Eleanor climbed down from the wagon before he could help her. She turned slowly, taking in the homestead, the valley, the mountains beyond. When she faced him again, something had shifted in her expression. "It's perfect." Cole blinked, surprised. Perfect. It is the first place I have seen in a very long time where no one is watching, where there are no eyes, judging no voices, criticizing no hands. She stopped, pressed her lips together. Yes, Mr. Hartley, I think it is perfect. He showed her inside, carrying her trunk, while she followed with the carpet bag. The cabin consisted of 2 rooms, a main living space with a fireplace, table, chairs, and a kitchen area along one wall, a smaller bedroom with a simple bed and a dresser. Bedroom's yours, he said, setting the trunk at the foot of the bed. I'll take the loft. He gestured toward the ladder, leading to a sleeping space built into the eaves. I cannot take your room. You can and will. His tone left no room for argument. You need privacy. The loft works fine for me. She looked like she wanted to protest further, but simply nodded instead. Thank you. There's a washstand there, basin and pitcher. Water's from the spring, cold but clean. I'll bring in more after I tend the horses. He paused at the door. You're safe here, Miss Ashford. I meant what I said in town. Eleanor. She met his eyes. If we are to live under the same roof, you should call me Eleanor. Cole, then. Just Cole. He left her to settle in, went back outside to unhitch the horses and get them settled in the barn. The familiar routine of caring for animals settled his nerves, gave his hands something to do while his mind worked. He had just upended his entire life for a stranger, invited potential danger to his doorstep for a woman he did not know. It should have felt reckless. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing he had done in 3 years. The sun was lowering toward the mountains when he finished his chores and headed back to the cabin. He found Eleanor in the main room, standing by the window, silhouetted against the golden light. She had removed her traveling dress and wore something simpler, a plain cotton dress in dove gray. Her hair, dark brown and longer than he had realized, hung in a loose braid over one shoulder. I started a fire, she said without turning. I hope that is all right. It seemed like it might get cold once the sun sets. It will. And yes, that's fine. He moved to the kitchen area, began pulling out supplies for supper. You hungry? I could eat. They prepared the meal together in near silence, Cole handling the heavier work, Eleanor moving around the small space with practiced efficiency. She chopped vegetables with the skill of someone well-trained in domestic arts. Her movements were precise, economical, suggesting years of practice. When she had to reach for something on a higher shelf, Cole noticed the way her hand trembled slightly before steadying. The first crack in her composure he had seen. Sit down, he said. Let me finish this. I can help. You can help by sitting down and telling me what you want from this arrangement. Eleanor set down the knife carefully. She turned to face him, and for a moment her mask slipped. He saw exhaustion there, and fear, and something harder to name, determination, perhaps, or desperation refined into steel. She sat at the table, folded her hands. When she spoke, her voice was steady. The matrimonial agency expected me to fulfill a marriage contract. They made that clear. But you have asked nothing of me except that I heal. Why? Cole continued, stirring the pot, considering his answer. Because I know what it is to run from something. And I know what it is to need time before you can face what comes next. He turned to look at her. I'm not interested in a wife who feels obligated or trapped. If and when we talk about marriage, it will be because we both want it, not because some agency says we should. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. You are not what I expected, Mr. Hartley. Neither are you, Miss Ashford. They ate at the table as darkness filled the valley and stars emerged in impossible numbers overhead. The meal was simple. Stew made from preserved venison. Bread Cole had baked 2 days prior. Coffee strong enough to strip paint. Eleanor ate slowly, carefully. That seemed like progress. How long have you been here? She asked, breaking the silence. On this ranch 3 years. Built the cabin myself. Cleared the land, started the herd with money I had saved. He did not mention what he had left behind, what had driven him to seek solitude. Some stories waited for trust. It must be lonely, sometimes. But lonely is better than some alternatives. She nodded as though she understood completely. Perhaps she did. What about you? He asked. The agency letter said you needed placement urgently, but did not say why. Her hands tightened on her coffee cup. I am running from a man who believes he owns me. Husband guardian, my uncle, Thaddeus Ashford. Cole went very still. The name struck him like a physical blow. Ashford, as in Ashford Textiles, as in one of the wealthiest families in Boston, as in connections that reached into every corner of Eastern power. "You are related to Thaddeus Ashford," he said carefully. "He is my father's brother. My parents died when I was 12. I went to live with him." Cole set down his fork. This changed everything. If she was running from Thaddeus Ashford, then the danger following her was not some local trouble or angry suitor. This was the kind of enemy who could reach across a continent, who could buy law and justice and anything else he required. "Does he know you came west?" "He knows I left. I do not know if he knows where I went." The agency promised discretion. Cole stood moved to the window, looked out at the darkness beyond. His mind raced through implications, through the ways this could destroy the fragile safety he had built. "Why did you run?" he asked. Eleanor's voice came from behind him, quiet and steady. "Because staying would have killed me, one way or another." He turned to face her. She had risen from the table, stood with her hands clasped in front of her. In the lamplight she looked impossibly young and impossibly tired all at once. "I need you to understand something, Mr. Hartley. I am not here under false pretenses. When I contacted the agency, I knew exactly what I was agreeing to. A mail-order marriage is a business arrangement, nothing more. I expected to earn my place through labor to fulfill the duties of a wife in exchange for security and a home." She paused, gathering herself. "But I cannot do that right now. I need time. Time to breathe without fear. Time to remember who I was before he broke me into something compliant and useful." She met his eyes. "Can you give me that time?" Cole studied her face, this woman who had crossed a continent to escape a monster who stood before him asking for nothing but space to heal. "Yes," he said. "You will have all the time you need." The first week passed in careful negotiation of space and silence. Eleanor kept to herself, mostly exploring the property during the day while Cole worked. She cooked meals with skill that suggested expensive training. She organized the cabin with quiet efficiency. She spoke when spoken to, but offered little beyond polite response. Cole gave her distance, understanding that trust could not be rushed. On the 8th night, he woke to his own screaming. The nightmare came, as it always did, vivid and terrible. Marcus Brennan standing in that Wyoming boarding house, a knife pressed to the throat of a young woman, eyes wild with the desperate fury of a cornered animal. Cole's voice steady despite the fear, ordering Marcus to let her go. The woman's terrified whimpering, the moment Marcus's hand twitched, the blade biting into soft flesh, and Cole pulling the trigger. The boom of the gunshot echoed through his dream and into waking. He jerked upright in the loft, heart hammering, reaching for the Winchester that was always within arm's reach. Footsteps on the ladder. Cole spun, bringing the rifle to bare finger on the trigger. Eleanor froze halfway up the ladder, her face pale in the moonlight streaming through the loft window. Time stopped. They stared at each other across 3 feet of space, Cole's rifle pointed directly at her chest, both of them breathing hard. Eleanor did not scream, did not plead. She simply looked at him with those winter ice eyes and waited. Slowly, his hands shaking, Cole lowered the rifle. "I could have killed you," he said, his voice rough, "but you did not." She climbed the rest of the way into the loft, moving with careful deliberation, giving him time to adjust to her presence. "You were having a nightmare," she said. "I heard you calling out. I'm sorry I woke you." She sat on the edge of the sleeping pallet, keeping distance between them. Who is Marcus? The question hung in the darkness. Cole set the rifle aside, pressed the palms of his hands against his eyes. "No one. Go back to bed. We all have ghosts, Mr. Hartley. Some just louder than others." He lowered his hands, looked at her. She sat perfectly still, waiting. Not pushing. Just present. Marcus Brennan Cole heard himself say. "A man I killed 3 years ago." Eleanor did not react with shock or fear. She simply nodded, as though this confirmed something she had already suspected. "Did he deserve it? I thought so at the time. And now I do not know what I think. Just that he is dead and I am alive, and neither of us got the justice we were owed." They sat in silence. Outside an owl called. The wind moved through the cottonwoods with a sound like distant water. "I killed my parents," Eleanor said quietly. Cole's head snapped up. What, not with my hands, but with my existence? They died because of me, because my uncle wanted what they had and I was too young to stop him. She turned to look at Cole, and in the moonlight her face was carved from marble. So you see, Mr. Hartley, we both carry the dead with us. Perhaps that is why I feel safe here. You understand what it is to be haunted? She rose, moved toward the ladder. Good night, Cole. Good night, Eleanor. After she descended, Cole lay back down, but sleep did not return. He stared at the rough wooden beams overhead and wondered what he had invited into his home. A woman running from Thaddeus Ashford. A woman who spoke of causing her parents' deaths. A woman who looked at a rifle pointed at her heart and did not flinch. He was in deeper than he had realized. The second week brought a visitor. Cole was mending fence in the north pasture when he saw the rider approaching. A woman alone, moving at the pace of someone who had been traveling for some time. He recognized the signs of a horse beginning to tire the way its gait had become uneven. He rode to meet her, one hand resting on the revolver at his hip. The woman pulled up as he approached. She was perhaps 29 or 30, dressed in black, her face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. When she looked at him, her eyes were dark and unreadable. "I am looking for Benson Creek," she said. "My horse has gone lame. I was hoping to find somewhere to rest before continuing." "You are on Blackwater Ranch," Cole said. "Benson Creek is 18 miles south. Your horse will not make it that far today." The woman looked down at her mount, then back at Cole. "Is there somewhere I could shelter for the night I can pay?" Cole studied her. Everything about this felt wrong. A woman traveling alone in Montana territory, no supplies visible, no explanation for why she was so far from any established road, but refusing help on the frontier was not done. People died in the wilderness. You helped strangers because one day you might be the stranger needing help. "You can stay at the ranch house," he said. "I will see to your horse, thank you." The woman dismounted with the stiffness of someone who had been riding for many hours. "I am Sarah Brennan." The name hit Cole like a fist to the gut. Brennan, the same surname as Marcus, the same surname as Howard, the matrimonial agent. Coincidence, or something far more dangerous? "Cole Hartley," he managed to say. "Follow me." They rode back to the ranch in silence. Cole's mind raced through possibilities. If this woman was related to Marcus Brennan, if she had somehow tracked him here, then everything he had built was about to collapse. But her face showed no recognition, no sign that his name meant anything to her. Eleanor was in the garden when they arrived, tending the vegetables with the same precise efficiency she brought to everything. She straightened as they approached, her eyes moving from Cole to the stranger with sharp assessment. "Eleanor," Cole said, dismounting. "This is Sarah Brennan. Her horse has gone lame. She will be staying the night." Eleanor's expression did not change, but Cole saw the way her hands tightened on the trowel she held. "Miss Brennan," she said. "Welcome, Mrs. Brennan," Sarah corrected. "I am widowed. I am sorry for your loss." Sarah's eyes flickered with something Cole could not read. "Thank you. It was some time ago, but the grief never quite leaves." Cole led Sarah's horse to the barn, examined the leg. The lameness was real enough, not severe, but enough to require rest. He settled the animal in a stall, then returned to the house. Inside, he found Eleanor and Sarah in the main room. The tension between them was palpable. "You have a lovely home," Mrs. Hartley, Sarah was saying. Eleanor's pause was barely perceptible. "Thank you, though I am not Mrs. Hartley. Not yet." Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Oh, forgive me. I assumed." "We have only recently met," Eleanor said smoothly. "Mr. Hartley is considering whether to make our arrangement permanent." Sarah looked between them, and Cole saw calculation in her eyes. "A mail-order bride situation, then. How modern." Something in her tone made Cole's instincts flare. This woman was not what she seemed. But he could not determine what she was hiding, or why. That evening, the three of them ate together. Sarah was polite, asking questions about the ranch, about Montana, about their plans. Eleanor answered with careful vagueness. Cole said as little as possible, but he watched Sarah, the way her gaze lingered on certain things, the way she studied him when she thought he was not looking, the way her hand occasionally moved to touch something at her neck hidden beneath her collar. When Sarah retired for the night, taking Eleanor's room while Eleanor moved to the loft with Cole finally voiced his concern. Something is wrong with her. Eleanor, lying on the pallet beside him with careful distance between them, nodded in the darkness. She is looking for something, or someone. You noticed it too. I notice everything, Mr. Hartley. It is how I have survived this long. Cole turned on his side to face her. Do you think she is here for you, sent by your uncle? No. Eleanor's voice was certain. If my uncle sent someone, it would not be a woman traveling alone. It would be men with guns and legal documents. Then she is here for me. The admission hung between them. Who did you kill, Cole? Eleanor asked softly. What did Marcus Brennan do to deserve death? And so there in the darkness, with a dangerous stranger sleeping below, Cole told her everything. He told her about being a U.S. Deputy Marshal in Wyoming, about investigating reports of young women disappearing from eastern cities, about tracing the trail back to Marcus Brennan, a seemingly respectable businessman who ran a network that bought and sold human lives. He told her about the raid on the boarding house, about finding Marcus with a knife to a young woman's throat, about the split-second decision to fire. He told her about Marcus's family descending like locusts, using their wealth and connections to paint Cole as a murderer, to bury the evidence of Marcus's crimes to force Cole to run or hang. Chitwang. When he finished, silence filled the loft. Then Eleanor spoke. The girl, the one he held. What happened to her, I do not know. She disappeared after giving her statement. They said she recanted, claimed I had forced her to lie. But I think they paid her to vanish, or worse. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. If Sarah Brennan is Marcus's widow, then she is here to kill you, yes. And you let her stay anyway. I could not turn her away without revealing that I know who she is. That would confirm I am who she is looking for. Eleanor rolled onto her side, facing him in the darkness. What will you do? I do not know yet, but I will not let her hurt you. How noble. Eleanor's voice carried the faintest edge of mockery. The fugitive protecting the runaway. We make quite a pair. Despite everything, Cole smiled. That we do. They fell silent. Outside, the night sounds of Montana continued their eternal conversation. Somewhere in the darkness, Sarah Brennan slept or pretended to, and Cole lay awake wondering which of his ghosts would destroy him first. The third week brought the detective. Vincent Cross arrived on a Tuesday morning, riding a black horse and carrying himself with the particular confidence of a Pinkerton man. Cole saw him coming from a quarter-mile away and had time to prepare. Eleanor was inside when Vincent knocked on the door. Cole answered it, positioning himself to block the view into the cabin. Mr. Hartley Vincent was young, perhaps 26, with sharp eyes and a careful manner. My name is Vincent Cross. I am a detective with the Pinkerton Agency. I am looking for a young woman named Eleanor Ashford. I have reason to believe she may be in this area. Cole kept his face neutral. What business do you have with Miss Ashford? Her uncle, Mr. Thaddeus Ashford of Boston, has hired me to locate her. She left home without permission, and he is concerned for her welfare. Permission. The word sat bitter in the air. I do not know anyone by that name, Cole said. Vincent reached into his coat, pulled out a photograph. Have you seen this woman? Cole looked at the image. It was Eleanor, younger, smiling, photographed in a formal pose that spoke of wealth and privilege. Vincent studied him for a long moment. Mr. Hartley, I understand you recently contacted a matrimonial agency. I understand a woman arrived here approximately 3 weeks ago. News travels fast. In small towns it does. Vincent replaced the photograph. Mr. Hartley, I am going to be direct with you. I know Eleanor Ashford is here. I know you married her, or are planning to, and I know that her uncle is prepared to pay me $5,000 to bring her back to Boston. Cole's hand moved toward his revolver. Vincent noticed but did not react. But before I do anything, Vincent continued, his voice lowering, I need to know if what she told the matrimonial agency is true, about what her uncle did to her. The question caught Cole off guard. What did she tell them that is confidential? But if it is true, then this is not a simple case of a wayward niece. This is something else entirely. Cole made a decision. He stepped aside. You should ask her yourself. Eleanor sat at the table, her hands folded, her face composed. She looked at Vincent Cross without fear. "Mr. Cross," she said, "you have been following me for quite some time." Vincent entered, removed his hat. "2 weeks, Miss Ashford. You are good at covering your tracks. I had motivation." Sarah Brennan descended from the loft, and the room suddenly felt very small. 4 people, each carrying secrets, each waiting for someone else to make the first move. Vincent looked at Sarah with surprise. "Ma'am, I was not aware Mr. Hartley had another guest." "I am just passing through," Sarah said. "My horse is injured." Vincent turned back to Eleanor. "Miss Ashford, your uncle wants you returned to Boston. He claims you are unwell, making false accusations, in need of medical care." "My uncle is a liar. He has legal documents. A doctor's affidavit stating you suffer from nervous hysteria. A doctor my uncle paid." Eleanor's voice was ice. "Tell me, Mr. Cross, did my uncle happen to mention why I left? He said you were overwrought, emotional, that you fled after a minor disagreement." Eleanor stood. Her composure finally cracked, and beneath it was fury that made the room feel smaller. "A minor disagreement," she repeated. "Is that what he calls forcing me into the bed of his business associate? Is that what he calls standing outside the door while I was raped?" Vincent went very still. "He calls it business." Eleanor continued, her voice shaking now. "He calls it securing partnerships. He calls it teaching me my place. But I call it what it is. I call it what he did to my parents when they tried to protect me. I call it murder." The silence that followed was absolute. Vincent's face had gone pale. He looked at Eleanor, then at Cole, then back to Eleanor. "Can you prove any of this? I can prove all of it." Eleanor's hands were shaking, but her voice steadied. "I have evidence, documents, testimony. Proof that my uncle murdered my father, his own brother, to take control of the family business. Proof of his other crimes. I have been gathering it for 2 years. Where is this evidence hidden? And it stays hidden until I am sure I am safe." Vincent sat down heavily. He looked at his hands, then at the photograph of Eleanor still sitting on the table. $5,000, he said quietly. "That is what he offered me. But he was very specific about one thing. You were to be returned alive and unharmed. He made that very clear." He met Eleanor's eyes. "Now I understand why. Dead women cannot recant their accusations." Cole watched this exchange, his mind working through the implications. Vincent Cross was not a simple hired gun. He was a man with a conscience struggling against his duty. "What are you going to do?" Cole asked. Vincent stood. "I am going to report that I found no trace of Eleanor Ashford in Montana Territory. I am going to tell Thaddeus Ashford that his niece has vanished and I cannot locate her." He looked at Eleanor. "But you need to understand. If he is as dangerous as you say, he will send others. He will not stop. I know. Then you need protection. Legal protection." Vincent glanced at Cole. "If you marry her, her status changes. A married woman has different legal standing. It is not perfect, but it is something." Eleanor turned to Cole. Her face was unreadable. "We should speak privately." Vincent nodded. "I will wait outside." After he left, Sarah also excused herself, leaving Cole and Eleanor alone. Eleanor walked to the window, looked out at the valley, bathed in afternoon light. "I need to tell you something," she said. Cole waited. "I am pregnant." The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. Cole opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Whose Eleanor turned to face him, and the pain in her eyes was almost unbearable. "My uncle's business associate. The one he sold me to. The one who—" She did not finish. She did not need to. "Does your uncle know?" "Not when I left. But he will figure it out soon enough. And he will use it. He will claim I am a loose woman unfit for society. He will have me declared incompetent and locked away." Her voice broke. "Unless I marry, unless I have a husband who can claim the child as his own—" She crossed to Cole, stood before him with her hands clasped. "I am asking you to save my life, Mr. Hartley. I am asking you to marry me. Not next week or next month. Now. Today. Before the detective changes his mind. Before my uncle sends someone else. Before I lose what little time I have left." Cole looked at this woman who had arrived 3 weeks ago with secrets and scars and a strength that terrified and awed him in equal measure. He thought of Marcus Brennan, of the life he had left behind, of all the ways this could go wrong. Then he thought of Eleanor standing in the street in Benson Creek asking if he was a man of his word. "Yes," he said, "I will marry you." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. "Thank you." They rode to Benson Creek that evening, Vincent Cross accompanying them as witness. Judge Carroll performed the ceremony in the territorial office, his eyes sharp despite the whiskey on his breath. "Do you, Cole Hartley, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Eleanor Ashford, take this man as your lawfully wedded husband?" Eleanor looked at Cole. In her eyes he saw fear and gratitude and something else, something that might become trust given time. "I do." "Then by the authority vested in me by the Montana Territory, I pronounce you husband and wife." And just like that, Cole Hartley acquired a pregnant wife, a dead marshal's widow sleeping in his loft, and a Pinkerton detective who knew his secrets. The ride back to Blackwater Ranch was silent. Vincent had departed for Helena, promising to file false reports and buy them time. Sarah had been waiting at the ranch when they returned, her face unreadable. Now, as night fell and the four of them sat around the table, the weight of what had been set in motion pressed down on them all. Eleanor was the first to speak. "This is not what any of us planned, but it is where we are. So I propose we be honest with each other, completely honest, because secrets will kill us faster than my uncle will." She looked at Sarah. "You are Marcus Brennan's widow. You came here to find the man who killed your husband. You found him." Sarah's hand moved to the locket at her throat. She opened it, showed them the tiny photograph inside. Marcus young and smiling. "I have been looking for you for 3 months," she said to Cole. "I was going to kill you," was Cole asked. Sarah closed the locket. "I heard what you told her, about the trafficking, about the girl. My husband's family told me you murdered him over a gambling debt. They told me you were a corrupt lawman who killed innocent men." She met Cole's eyes. "But I knew my husband. I knew what he was capable of, and I knew his family lied about everything. So I came here wanting truth more than revenge. And now," Eleanor asked, "now I do not know what I want." Sarah looked at her hands, "except perhaps to stop running from my ghosts." The four of them sat in silence as the fire burned low and the Montana night pressed close around their fragile shelter. They had made themselves a family of fugitives and liars and broken people, trying to build something clean from dirty pieces. Cole looked at Eleanor, his wife of 3 hours carrying a child that was not his, but that he would claim as his own. He thought of Marcus Brennan. He thought of Thaddeus Ashford, somewhere in Boston, already planning his next move. He thought of all the ways this could end in blood and fire. But for now, in this moment, they were together. They were honest. They were trying. And that, Cole decided, would have to be enough. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows, carrying with it the promise of storms to come. Morning came too early and not early enough. Cole woke in the bedroom, the space still foreign, despite having slept there before. Eleanor lay on the far side of the bed, as distant as the mattress allowed her back to him. She had not moved all night, or if she had done it so quietly he had not noticed. The marriage certificate sat on the dresser, ink still fresh, a legal document that changed everything and nothing. Mrs. Eleanor Hartley. The name looked strange in the morning light, like a costume that did not quite fit. Cole rose, carefully dressed in the gray dawn, and slipped from the room without waking her. Or perhaps she was already awake, lying still in the darkness, listening to him leave. Sarah was in the main room when he emerged, fully dressed, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee already cooling in her hands. She looked up as he entered, and something passed between them, an acknowledgment of the strangeness they now inhabited together. "Your wife is still sleeping?" Sarah said. It was not quite a question. Yes. The word hung in the air. Wife. The reality of it settled over Cole like a weight he had not anticipated. He had married a woman he barely knew, had claimed another man's child as his own, had bound himself legally to someone carrying enough danger to destroy them both. Sarah stood, moved to the stove, poured him coffee without asking. The gesture was domestic, almost sisterly, and it unsettled him. "We should talk," she said, "about what happens next." Cole accepted the cup, sat at the table across from where she had been. Beyond the windows, the valley was filling with pale light, the mountains emerging from shadow like sleeping giants waking. "You heard everything last night," he said. "About Eleanor, about her uncle." "I did." Sarah returned to her seat. "And I have been thinking about it all night." She wrapped her hands around her own cup, stared into the dark liquid as though reading prophecy there. "My husband was not a good man, Mr. Hartley. I knew that when I married him. His family had money, and I had none. It was a transaction like so many marriages are. But I convinced myself that knowing what he was made it acceptable, that going into it with clear eyes somehow absolved me." She looked up, met his gaze. "I was wrong. He hurt people, young women mostly, girls really, and I looked the other way because it was easier than facing what I had become by association." Cole said nothing, letting her confession unfold. "When he died, I felt relief first, then guilt about the relief. Then his family came with their story about you, about the corrupt marshal who had murdered an innocent man, and I let myself believe them. Because if you were the villain, then maybe Marcus had been a victim. Maybe I had not spent 5 years married to a monster." Sarah's voice cracked. "But I knew better. I always knew better." "Why are you telling me this?" Cole asked. "Because Eleanor is right. Secrets will kill us, and I am tired of carrying mine alone." She reached to her neck, removed the locket, set it on the table between them. The tiny photograph of Marcus Brennan stared up at them, frozen in a moment, before his sins had caught him. "I came here to kill you," Sarah said. "I had it planned. Wait until you trusted me, poison your coffee, or shoot you in your sleep. Simple revenge for a simple widow. But you did not. No, because the moment I saw you, I knew the story his family told was a lie. You do not move like a corrupt man. You move like someone who has been hunted, and hunters recognize the hunted." She closed the locket but did not put it back on. "So now I am here in your home drinking your coffee, knowing that the man I mourned was a devil, and the man I came to kill might be the most honest person I have met in years." "What will you do?" Cole asked. "I do not know yet." Sarah's smile was bitter. "But I think I will stay if you will let me, at least until my horse is fully healed. At least until I understand what kind of story I have walked into." Eleanor appeared in the bedroom doorway before Cole could respond. She wore the same gray dress from the night before, her hair still in its braid, her face pale but composed. "You may stay," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone born to command. "But if you stay, you work. We all work. There are no passengers here." Sarah stood, inclined her head. "Fair enough, Mrs. Hartley. Eleanor, please. We are all fugitives here. Formality seems absurd." The three of them stood in the small cabin, bound together by circumstances none of them had chosen, but all of them had accepted. Outside, the sun cleared the mountains, flooding the valley with light that promised warmth, but delivered only clarity. The days that followed established a rhythm of careful coexistence. Sarah proved capable, with horses and livestock taking over the barn work with quiet efficiency. Eleanor managed the household with the precision of someone trained in running a much larger establishment. Cole worked the land, mended fences, checked on cattle, and tried not to think too hard about the surreal domesticity that had invaded his solitude. They spoke little during the day, each lost in their own work and thoughts. But in the evenings, gathered around the table for supper, the conversations deepened. Eleanor told them about growing up in Boston, about parents who had loved her fiercely, but perhaps not wisely, who had built a successful textile business but failed to see the serpent in their midst, about her father's brother Thaddeus, who smiled at family gatherings while plotting their destruction. She did not speak of the rape directly again, but it lived in the careful way she moved, in the moments when her hand would drift unconsciously to her still flat stomach, in the way she flinched when anyone approached too quickly. Sarah spoke of her marriage to Marcus, of the slow realization that the man she had bound herself to was hollow at his core. She spoke of miscarriages, 3 of them each one, a small death that Marcus had seemed almost relieved by. Children would complicate things, he had said. Business travels easier without them. Cole spoke least, but what he shared carried weight. His years as a marshal, the cases that had broken something in him, the moment he had realized that justice and law were not always aligned, that sometimes doing right meant breaking rules that had been written to protect the guilty. On the 4th night after the wedding, as they sat by the fire, Eleanor asked the question Cole had been dreading. The box under the floorboards. What is in it? Cole's hand stilled on the piece of harness he had been mending. How do you know about that? I heard you pacing at night. Heard the board creak in that particular way loose boards do? She met his eyes across the firelight. I have not looked, but I am curious what a man hides so carefully. Sarah leaned forward, her interest obvious. Cole felt the walls closing in, the past pressing against the present. Evidence, he said finally, of who I used to be. Eleanor waited, giving him space to continue or refuse. Sarah said nothing, but her gaze was intent. Cole set aside the leather, stood, crossed to the corner where the loose board waited. He had not opened the box since he had buried it 3 years ago, had not needed to. The contents were seared into his memory. He pried up the board, lifted out the small wooden box, carried it to the table. His hands hesitated on the lid. Then Eleanor reached out, covered his hand with hers. The gesture was simple, offering support without pressure. Cole took a breath, opened the box. Inside lay the artifacts of a life he had tried to bury, a deputy U.S. Marshal badge tarnished but still bearing his name. Cole Hartley, Wyoming Territory. Newspaper clippings yellowed with age. Deputy kills businessman in shootout. Lawman flees before trial. Marshal wanted for murder. A letter in faded ink. Cole, they are coming for you. Marcus's family has connections. Disappear. Tom. And beneath it all, a photograph. A young woman, perhaps 19 or 20, staring at the camera with haunted eyes. No name, no identification, just a face Cole saw in his nightmares. Sarah picked up the badge, turned it over in her hands. You were a marshal, she said softly. The stories Marcus's family told, they were all lies. Not all lies. Cole's voice was rough. I did kill him. I did flee. Those parts are true. Eleanor studied the newspaper clippings, her lawyer's mind parsing the careful language. These articles do not say you murdered him. They say you killed him. There is a difference. Not to the law. Not when the dead man's family has enough money to write the law however they choose. Sarah set down the badge, picked up the photograph. Who is she? The reason I killed Marcus Brennan. Cole took the photograph from Sarah's hands, looked at the face he had tried and failed to forget. Her name was Anna. At least that is what she told me. She was from Pennsylvania, came west, looking for work as a governess. She answered an advertisement, got on a train, and ended up in a boarding house in Casper, Wyoming. He set the photograph on the table, could not bear to look at it anymore. By the time I found her, she had been there 6 months. She and 9 other girls, all between 16 and 22. Marcus Brennan ran the operation. He bought and sold them to brothels across the territory. The ones who resisted, the ones who tried to escape, they disappeared. The fire crackled in the silence. Outside wind moved through the cottonwoods with a sound like whispered warnings. I was investigating the disappearances, Cole continued, following a trail of missing women back to that boarding house. When I went in to make the arrest, Marcus grabbed Anna, put a knife to her throat, said if I did not leave, he would kill her. What did you do? Eleanor asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. I tried to negotiate, tried to talk him down, but his hand slipped, or he got impatient, or maybe he just wanted to see what would happen. The knife cut into her throat. Not deep, but enough to draw blood. And I saw in his eyes that he was going to kill her anyway. So I shot him. The words fell like stones into still water. Sarah's hand had moved to her locket, unconscious gesture of grief, or perhaps farewell, to the man she had thought she knew. What happened to Anna? Eleanor asked. She gave a statement, told the investigating officers everything, about Marcus, about the other girls, about the network. But his family came with lawyers and money. They paid her to recant, to say I had forced her to lie, to claim she had been working there willingly. Cole's jaw tightened, or that is what they said she did. Truth is, she vanished. One day she was there, the next she was gone. No forwarding address, no trace. I think they paid her to disappear, or maybe they made her disappear. I will never know which. You ran, Sarah said. It was not a question. I ran. Because my fellow marshals told me to, because the trial was going to be rigged, because dying in prison for doing the right thing seemed like the worst kind of waste. He looked at both women, saw judgment in neither of their faces. Just understanding. The hard-won knowledge that sometimes survival meant running, that courage sometimes looked like cowardice from the outside. "So now you know," he said. "You are married to a wanted man, Eleanor. And you, Sarah, you are sheltering the man who killed your husband, justified or not. If that changes anything, tell me now." Eleanor stood cross to where Cole sat, and for the first time since their wedding she touched him deliberately. Her hand rested on his shoulder, warm and solid. "It changes nothing," she said, "except perhaps it makes me trust you more. You killed to save a life. My uncle kills to serve his own power. There is no comparison." Sarah nodded slowly. "I came here hating you based on lies. Now I know the truth. And the truth is you did what I wish I had been brave enough to do. You stopped a monster. The fact that the monster was my husband does not make your action wrong." She stood, gathered the items from the box, with careful hands placed them back inside. "We are all running from something," she said. "We are all carrying ghosts. Perhaps that is what makes us family now. Not blood or marriage or duty, just the simple fact that we understand what it costs to survive." That night, after Eleanor and Sarah had retired, Cole sat alone in the main room, staring into the dying fire. The box was back under the floorboards, but the secrets were out, exposed to air and light and judgment. He heard soft footsteps on the loft ladder. Eleanor descended, wrapped in a shawl against the night chill. "Could not sleep?" he asked. "Too many thoughts." She sat in the chair across from him, drew her knees up like a child seeking comfort. "May I ask you something? Always. Do you regret it, marrying me?" Cole studied her face in the firelight. She looked impossibly young in this moment, stripped of the armor she wore during the day. "No," he said. "Do you? I do not know yet." Eleanor's honesty was sharp as a blade. "I am grateful. I feel safer than I have in years. But I also feel like I have dragged you into a war that is not yours to fight. I chose this. You did not drag me anywhere, but you did not choose it, knowing everything. You did not know about the baby, about what my uncle did, about the evidence I carry." Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees, meeting her eyes across the small space between them. "Tell me about the evidence," he said. "Tell me what you are really running from." Eleanor was quiet for so long that Cole thought she might refuse. Then she began to speak, her voice low and steady, telling a story that made the fire seem cold. "My parents died when I was 12, she said. "A fire in our Boston home. The official story was an accident. A lamp knocked over oil-spreading flames, catching before anyone could stop them. She stared into the flames as though seeing that night play out in the coals. But I knew better even then. I was supposed to be home that night. I had lessons with my tutor. But my mother sent me to stay with a friend instead. Last minute. No explanation, just an insistence that I go." Eleanor's hands tightened on her shawl. "I remember my mother hugging me goodbye, holding me too long, too tight, whispering in my ear, 'Be brave, my darling. No matter what comes, be brave.'" A tear traced down her cheek, catching the firelight. She knew. Somehow she knew. And she sent me away to save me. Cole's chest constricted. "From the fire, from my uncle." Eleanor's voice hardened. "Thaddeus Ashford, my father's older brother. The man who had always resented that my father inherited their grandfather's business. The man who smiled at family dinners while planning their destruction." "How do you know?" "Because 2 years ago I overheard him talking to his lawyer. They thought I was out at a social engagement. But I had come home early with a headache. I heard them through the study door." Eleanor closed her eyes, reciting from memory. "The lawyer said, 'Do you ever regret it? The fire.' And my uncle laughed, actually laughed. He said, 'Regret removing an obstacle to my rightful inheritance.'" "Why would I regret efficiency?" The study door was open a crack, Eleanor continued. "I could see them, see the whiskey in my uncle's hand, the legal documents on his desk. Documents showing how he had taken control of everything after my parents' death. How he had been named my guardian, how he had slowly, systematically absorbed everything they had built. What did you do?" "I ran. Back to my room. Pretended I had just arrived home. But I started paying attention, started looking through his office when he was out, started copying documents, collecting evidence. Eleanor opened her eyes, met Cole's gaze. It took me 2 years, but I found proof. Correspondence with the man he hired to start the fire. Payment records disguised as business expenses. A confession letter from the arsonist written before he died, clearing his conscience. Where is it, the evidence hidden? Somewhere my uncle cannot reach it. Somewhere it will surface if anything happens to me. Cole processed this understanding, dawning. That is why he cannot kill you. You have insurance. Yes and no. Eleanor's expression was grim. The evidence is insurance against direct murder. But he found other ways to destroy me. When he realized I knew, when he understood I was gathering proof, he changed tactics. The business associate Cole said, pieces falling into place. His name is James Whitmore, a shipping magnate from New York. My uncle wanted a partnership, needed it to expand into international markets. But Whitmore drove a hard bargain. Eleanor's voice went flat, empty of emotion. The way people spoke of horrors too great to feel. The bargain was me. A night with his ward in exchange for the contract. Thaddeus arranged it like he was arranging any other business transaction. He told me it was my duty to the family. That sacrifice was expected, that if I refused, he would have me declared incompetent and institutionalized. The fire had burned down to embers. The room was growing cold, but neither of them moved. So I submitted, Eleanor continued, because I was terrified and alone, and I thought maybe if I did this one thing, he would leave me alone afterward. But of course he did not. He saw that I would break under enough pressure, and he started planning how to use me again. When did you know about the pregnancy? 3 weeks after. I missed my monthly courses. I knew immediately, and I knew what he would do. He would force me to marry Whitmore or have the baby quietly disappeared. Either way, I would be trapped, ruined, silenced. So you ran, so I ran. I took what money I could access, wrote to the matrimonial agency, and got on the first train west. I thought if I could get far enough away, if I could marry someone before my uncle could stop me, I might be safe. Eleanor looked at Cole with something like wonder in her eyes. I did not expect you. I expected someone desperate or cruel, someone who would use me as badly as my uncle did. Instead, I found this, you. A man who asks for nothing and offers everything. I am not offering everything, Cole said. I am offering what I can, which might not be enough when your uncle comes. He will come, Eleanor said with certainty. The detective bought us time, but not much. Thaddeus Ashford does not accept defeat. He will come with lawyers and guns and whatever else he needs. Then we prepare, Cole said. We make a plan. We gather our own evidence and allies. We, Eleanor's voice held surprise and something that might have been hope. We, Cole confirmed. You are my wife now. Your fight is my fight. The quiet moment stretched between them, filled with understanding that went beyond words. Two people who had been alone, learning what it meant to have someone stand beside them. Sarah appeared at the top of the loft ladder, her silhouette dark against the pale light filtering through the window behind her. I could not help but overhear, she said. And I think you should know, I may be able to help. She descended the ladder, joined them by the dying fire. My husband's family has connections throughout the East. Lawyers, judges, businessmen. They are powerful, yes, but they are also corrupt. And corruption leaves trails. Sarah looked between Cole and Eleanor. If Thaddeus Ashford is as bad as you say, if he has been operating with impunity for this long, then others know. Others have evidence. We just need to find them. How? Eleanor asked. The same way Cole investigated the trafficking network. Follow the money. Follow the connections. Find the people who benefited from your uncle's crimes and find the ones who were hurt by them. Sarah's eyes glinted in the firelight. Build a case so strong that even his money and influence cannot bury it. Cole felt something shift in the room, a change in the air and the dynamic between them. They were no longer just fugitives hiding from their respective pasts. They were becoming something else, something purposeful. It would be dangerous, he said. If we start digging, if we start asking questions, Thaddeus will know. He will come faster and harder. He is coming anyway, Eleanor said. At least this way we face him with weapons of our own. The three of them sat in silence, each calculating risks and possibilities. Outside, the Montana night pressed close, vast and indifferent to human schemes. Finally, Sarah spoke. "There is something else you should know," she said. "Something I have not told you." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a letter, yellowed and creased from frequent reading. This came to me a month after Marcus died, from his lawyer part of his estate. It was sealed, marked to be opened only by me. "What did it say?" Cole asked. Sarah unfolded the letter with careful hands. It was a confession. Marcus knew he was in danger, knew that his business partners were planning to eliminate him, to take over his operations. He wrote this letter as insurance, detailing everything. Names, locations, methods. The entire trafficking network. She looked up, met their eyes. He sent it to me, hoping I would use it to protect myself, hoping I would have leverage if his partners came for me too. "And did you?" Eleanor asked. "Use it?" "No." Sarah's voice was heavy with regret. "I burned it. I was so angry, so ashamed of what he had been, that I destroyed the one thing that could have brought his partners to justice. The one thing that could have saved the girl still caught in that network." She smoothed the letter on her lap, or so I thought. But I lied. I kept a copy. I told myself it was for protection, but really it was because I could not quite bring myself to destroy the last thing my husband ever gave me, monster though he was. Sarah handed the letter to Cole. "The names in here, some of them are the same names connected to my husband's family, the people who twisted the story of his death, the people who came after you." Cole scanned the letter, his pulse quickening. "This changes everything." Eleanor leaned in, reading over his shoulder. Her sharp intake of breath told him she saw it too. "One of these names," she said, her finger stabbing at the page. "Jonathan Reeves. He is one of my uncle's business associates. One of the men he dines with regularly." Cole looked up from the letter, mind racing. "Your uncle is connected to the trafficking network." "Perhaps not directly," Eleanor said slowly, "but clearly he knows people who are. Which means we can connect him to it," Sarah finished. "We can build a case that ties Thaddeus Ashford to human trafficking, murder, and corruption. A case too big for even his money to bury." The pieces were falling into place. Separate stories, weaving together into something larger, more dangerous, more hopeful than any of them could have built alone. "But first," Cole said, "we need to make sure we survive long enough to use any of this." He stood, began pacing the strategic part of his mind, engaging fully for the first time in 3 years. "We need allies, local law enforcement we can trust. Someone in Helena with authority, someone clean. We need to get all our evidence into the right hands before Thaddeus makes his move." "I know someone," Eleanor said. "A federal prosecutor my father knew. Henry Morrison. He investigated corporate corruption, took on powerful men, and won. If anyone would believe us, it would be him." "Where is he, Washington?" Eleanor's face fell. "Too far. We cannot get evidence to him in time." "We can send telegrams," Sarah said, "explain the situation, ask him to coordinate with authorities closer to us." Eleanor was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. "There is one more person we should contact, someone who might be able to help clear your name while we deal with my uncle." Cole felt his chest tighten. "Who?" "Marshal Thomas Hewitt, the man who warned you to run 3 years ago." Cole stood, abruptly, walked to the window, stared out at the darkness. "Tom, I have not spoken to him since Wyoming. For all I know, he thinks I am dead, or wishes I was." Sarah leaned forward. "Dead. If he warned you to run, he believed you were innocent. That kind of loyalty does not disappear. Or it turns to resentment when the person you saved disappears without a word for 3 years." Cole's voice was bitter. "Tom risked his career to help me. I repaid him by vanishing." Eleanor joined him at the window. "Which is exactly why we should contact him now. Give him the chance to finish what he started, to help prove you were right to run. And if he refuses, if he has moved on, built a career by forgetting I exist, then we are no worse off than we are now. But if he helps," she placed her hand on his arm, "Cole, you could have your life back, your badge, your reputation, everything that was taken from you." The weight of possibility pressed down on Cole. 3 years of hiding, of pretending to be someone else, of carrying the shame of running, even though running had been the only sane choice. How would we even reach him? "I can send a telegram from Helena," Sarah said. "Tomorrow when I deposit the evidence, I will explain the situation, ask him to come. If he is the man you believe him to be, he will come." Cole looked at both women, these allies who had become family, who were willing to risk themselves for his redemption as much as their own. All right. Contact him. But do not give him details, not in a telegram anyone could read. Just tell him an old friend needs help with an old problem. He will know what it means. Sarah nodded. I will be careful. They talked through the night, building a plan from fragments of hope and desperation. By the time dawn light began filtering through the windows, they had something resembling a strategy. That night they sat together planning every detail of Sarah's mission to Helena. 3 sets of complete documents, Eleanor explained, spreading papers across the table. Each set contains copies of everything. My uncle's correspondence about my parents' murder, financial records showing embezzlement, the confession from the arsonist, everything. She pointed to the first stack. Set 1 goes to 3 different lawyers in Helena. Each lawyer will hold the documents in trust with instructions. If we do not check in every 2 weeks, they forward copies to federal prosecutors in Washington. And Set 2, Sarah asked. Set 2 goes directly to federal prosecutors via secured courier. We do not wait for my uncle to act. We start the investigation immediately. Eleanor tapped the 3rd stack. Set 3 goes to newspaper editors. The Helena Independent, the Montana Post, and the Boston Globe. They receive sealed packets with instructions to open and publish if anything happens to me or if they receive a specific coded telegram. That is thorough, Cole said with admiration. My uncle taught me to never rely on a single strategy. Eleanor's smile was cold. I am simply applying his lessons against him. What about the originals? Sarah asked. Hidden in multiple locations. Some buried on this property in places only I know, some deposited in a bank vault in Benson Creek under a false name, some sent to other contacts for safekeeping. Eleanor met their eyes. Even if my uncle finds 1 cache, even if he destroys 1 set of evidence, 10 more exist. He cannot silence me without triggering the very exposure he fears. When do I leave? Sarah asked. Tomorrow at first light. The sooner these are distributed, the safer we all are. Sarah gathered the document sets carefully. I will also send the telegram to Marshal Hewitt while I am there, she said. Tell him Cole needs help with an old problem. He will understand. Good. Eleanor nodded. And one more thing. What, while you are in Helena, file a report with the Territorial Marshal's Office. Anonymous tip about human trafficking connections to Boston businessmen. Include enough detail to start them investigating, but not so much that they trace it back to you. You want to start multiple investigations simultaneously, Cole said, understanding her strategy. Exactly. My uncle cannot fight battles on a dozen fronts at once. We overwhelm him with the truth until he has nowhere left to hide. She looked at both of them. By the time Thaddeus arrives here, the trap will already be sprung. He just will not know it yet. That night, Sarah packed carefully, triple-checking each document set to ensure nothing was missing. Cole gave her money for courier fees and bribes if needed. Eleanor gave her coded telegrams already written, ready to be sent to various recipients at specific times. Be careful, Eleanor said as Sarah prepared to leave the next morning. My uncle has people everywhere. Sarah mounted her horse, adjusted her saddlebags heavy with evidence that could destroy an empire. I spent 3 years hunting one man across a territory. I think I can manage 1 trip to Helena without being caught. She rode south as the sun cleared the mountains, carrying with her the ammunition that would bring Thaddeus Ashford's world crashing down. Cole and Eleanor stood together watching until she disappeared into the landscape. It has begun, Eleanor said quietly. Yes. There is no going back now. Good. I am tired of running forward anyway. Time to stand and fight. They turned back toward the house, toward the days of waiting that would follow, toward the confrontation they both knew was coming. But the trap was set. The evidence was distributed, and when Thaddeus finally came, he would discover that his niece had learned his lessons too well. She had beaten him at his own game. After Sarah left, Cole and Eleanor fell into a rhythm of preparation and waiting. 3 days passed, then 5. Each morning they woke expecting news. Each evening they went to bed with tension coiling tighter. On the 6th day, Eleanor was in the garden when Cole noticed her movements had become mechanical, distracted. He set aside the fence post he was mending and crossed to where she knelt among the vegetables. "What is troubling you?" She sat back on her heels, wiped dirt from her hands. I keep thinking about what comes after. After we face my uncle, after the legal matters are settled. What about it? We married for protection, for legal standing. But when the danger passes, when I no longer need the shelter of your name, she looked up at him. What then? Cole knelt beside her in the dirt. Then we decide if this marriage is something we want to continue, or if we were just convenient shelter for each other. Eleanor's eyes searched his face. And if I said I was beginning to want it to continue, not because of protection or necessity, but because, she trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish. Cole reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Then I would say I feel the same, that somewhere between your arrival and now you stopped being a stranger. I was helping and became someone I care about deeply. Even knowing what you know about me, about what was done to me, especially knowing that. Because it makes your strength even more remarkable. They knelt together in the garden dirt under their fingernails, the future uncertain, but the present suddenly clear. Eleanor leaned forward, kissed him gently. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. After this is over, she whispered, after we survive whatever comes next, we will talk about building something real, something chosen freely. Yes, Cole agreed, after we survive. Sarah returned on the 8th day, riding hard through morning mist that clung to the valley like prophecy. Cole saw her coming from the porch where he stood with his first coffee, the liquid gone cold in his cup as he watched her approach. Something was wrong. She rode with urgency that spoke of news, and news in their situation was rarely good. Eleanor emerged from the cabin, drawn by the sound of hoofbeats. Her hand moved unconsciously to her stomach, to the padding she wore beneath her dress, the fake pregnancy that concealed something far more valuable than a child. Sarah dismounted before her horse had fully stopped, stumbling slightly as her feet hit ground. Her face was gray with exhaustion, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep or tears or both. "It is done," she said without preamble. "The evidence is deposited with 3 separate lawyers in Helena. Each has instructions to forward copies to federal prosecutors if we do not check in every 2 weeks. Eleanor released a breath she had been holding. "Thank you, but there is more." Sarah's voice carried a weight that made Cole's instincts flare. "I sent a telegram to Washington as well, to Henry Morrison, the prosecutor your father knew." Eleanor went pale. "You contacted him directly." "Sarah, that was not part of the plan. I know. But while I was in Helena, I heard something. Thaddeus Ashford is already there, in Montana. He arrived 3 days ago with an entourage. Lawyers, hired security, and a Pinkerton detective." "Vincent Cross?" Cole asked. Sarah shook her head. "Someone else. A man named Vincent Cross is with them, but the detective is different. Someone with a reputation for finding people who do not want to be found. How much time do we have?" Eleanor's voice was steady, but Cole saw her hands trembling. "A day, maybe 2. They are in Helena now making inquiries, but it is only a matter of time before someone points them toward Benson Creek." The 3 of them stood in the pale morning light, the valley around them suddenly feeling less like sanctuary and more like trap. "Then we prepare," Cole said. "We choose our ground and we prepare. But first," Sarah said, her voice catching, "there is something I need to tell you both. Something I should have said when I first arrived." She removed her hat, twisted it in her hands. The gesture was nervous, uncharacteristic of the composed woman they had come to know. "My name is Sarah Brennan. Marcus Brennan was my husband. I came here to kill you, Cole Hartley." The words fell into the space between them like stones dropped into a still pond. Eleanor stepped back, hand moving toward the small revolver she had taken to carrying. Cole simply stood waiting, his body relaxed but ready. "I know," he said quietly. Sarah's head snapped up. "What I have known since you told me your name. Brennan is not a common surname in these parts, and you arrived too conveniently, too perfectly positioned to observe me. Then why did you let me stay? Because you did not kill me when you had the chance. Because I saw the doubt in your eyes when you looked at me. Because I gambled that you wanted truth more than revenge." Sarah's composure crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks, carving clean lines through the trail dust on her face. "They told me you murdered him in cold blood. His family, they said you were corrupt, that you shot Marcus over a gambling debt, that you fled before justice could be served." She sank down onto the porch steps, her strength finally giving out. But I knew my husband, knew what he was capable of. And when I heard you tell Eleanor about the trafficking, about the girl he held hostage, I knew the story his family told was a lie. Eleanor slowly lowered her hand from the revolver, moved to sit beside Sarah. The gesture was careful, offering solidarity without presuming forgiveness. "How long have you known where he was?" Eleanor asked gently. 3 months. I tracked him from Wyoming through reports, rumors, the kind of whispers that follow a man trying to disappear. When I learned he had contacted a matrimonial agency, I knew I was close. And you came here to kill him. Yes, Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I had it planned. Wait until he trusted me, poison his coffee, or shoot him while he slept. Simple revenge for a simple widow. What changed? Cole asked. You did. Sarah looked up at him. You and Eleanor. The way you moved around each other, the way you were trying to build something good from broken pieces. It reminded me that revenge is just another way of staying trapped in the past. She stood, faced Cole directly. Marcus was not a good man. He hurt people, destroyed lives, and I looked the other way because it was easier than facing what I had married. When he died, I felt relief. Then his family came with their lies, and I convinced myself that if you were the villain, maybe Marcus had been the victim. But he was not. No, he was exactly what you said he was, a monster, and you stopped him. Sarah extended her hand. I came here to kill you, Cole Hartley. Instead, I am asking if you can forgive me for ever wanting to. Cole looked at her hand, at the offering of peace from a woman who had every right to hate him. Then he took it, held it firmly. There is nothing to forgive. You loved him, and love makes us blind to truths we cannot bear to see. They stood together in the morning light, 3 broken people bound by violence and loss, and the fragile hope that they might build something better. Then Eleanor spoke, her voice cutting through the moment with practical urgency. If Thaddeus is already in Montana, we need to act now. We need to make a stand before he chooses the ground for us. What are you proposing? Cole asked. We bring him here, to Blackwater Ranch. We control the environment, we have defensible positions, and we force him to show his hand. That is suicide, Sarah said. He will come with armed men. We are 3 people against however many he brings. Eleanor shook her head. We are not fighting him with guns. We are fighting him with truth. And we make him come alone. How Eleanor's smile was cold and calculating, the expression of someone who had learned strategy from a master manipulator and was ready to turn those lessons against the teacher. We send him a message. We tell him I am willing to negotiate, that I have the evidence he wants, and I am prepared to trade it for my freedom. But he has to come alone, without lawyers or hired guns, or I burn everything and disappear. He will never agree to that, Sarah said. He will. Eleanor's certainty was absolute. Because his ego will not let him believe I could possibly outwit him. Because he thinks of me as a broken thing he can control with fear. Because he will want to see my face when he takes everything from me. She moved closer to Cole. And when he comes, we will be ready. The evidence will already be distributed. The investigations will already be started. The trap will already be sprung. He just will not know it yet. Cole studied Eleanor, seeing the steel beneath her careful composure. This was not the frightened woman who had arrived weeks ago. This was someone who had decided to stop running. When he asked, "Tomorrow." We send the message through Vincent Cross. Tell him to deliver it to Thaddeus directly. And if Vincent refuses, if he sides with your uncle, then we know where his loyalties lie, and we adjust accordingly. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Cole checked his weapons, counted ammunition, positioned supplies in strategic locations around the property. Sarah reinforced the barn, creating fallback positions in case things went badly. Eleanor wrote the message with careful precision, each word calculated to appeal to Thaddeus's arrogance while concealing their true intentions. As the sun lowered toward the mountains, Cole found Eleanor standing by the spring-fed pool where he had stood on his first night, looking at her reflection in the clear water. Nervous, he asked, terrified, but also ready. She turned to face him. I have been running from him for so long. It will be good to finally stand and fight. We could still leave, ride north into Canada, start over somewhere he cannot reach. No, Eleanor's voice was firm. I am done letting him chase me. Done letting fear dictate my choices. Tomorrow, one way or another, this ends. Cole moved to stand beside her, looked down at their reflections side by side in the water. Then we face it together. Together, she agreed. They stood in the quiet evening, two people who had found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something worth fighting for. Tomorrow would bring violence or vindication, or perhaps both. But tonight they had each other, and that was enough. Vincent Cross arrived at dawn alone as requested, riding a black horse and carrying a white flag tied to a stick. The gesture would have been comical if the circumstances were not so grave. Cole met him at the property line, rifle in hand, but not raised. "Mr. Hartley," Vincent said, stopping a respectful distance away, "I have a message from Thaddeus Ashford, and I have one for him." Cole handed over Eleanor's letter. Vincent took it, read quickly, his expression carefully neutral. "She wants him to come alone. He will never agree to that. Tell him if he does not, she burns the evidence and disappears. Tell him this is his one chance to resolve this quietly, without federal prosecutors and newspaper scandals." Vincent folded the letter, tucked it into his coat. "You know this is a trap. Of course it is a trap. The question is whether your employer is arrogant enough to walk into it." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Mr. Ashford is not my employer. He is my father." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Cole took a step back, reassessing everything he knew about Vincent Cross. "Your father. Illegitimate, unacknowledged, but yes, my father." Vincent's voice was bitter. "He kept my mother as a mistress for years, fathered me, then paid her to disappear when I became inconvenient, but he kept tabs on me. When I became a Pinkerton detective, he started using me for discreet work, tracking down problems, making them disappear. And Eleanor is a problem. The biggest one he has ever faced, because she has evidence that could destroy everything he has built. Will you deliver the message?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the valley as though finding answers in the landscape. "I will deliver it, but you should know he is planning to come regardless. He has men positioned in Benson Creek ready to move if things do not go his way." "How many? 4, plus himself, all armed, all professionals." Cole's mind raced through the math. 5 against 3 with the added complication of unknown loyalties. "And where do you stand in all this?" he asked Vincent directly. "I stand where I have always stood, torn between duty to a father who never claimed me and a conscience that tells me he is a monster." Vincent turned his horse, prepared to leave. "Deliver your message. My father will come. And when he does, we will all discover who I really am." He rode away, leaving Cole with more questions than answers. After Vincent left, Cole returned to the cabin where Eleanor and Sarah waited. "He is coming," Cole said. "Tomorrow at noon. Alone, Vincent says he has 4 men in Benson Creek ready to move if needed." Eleanor's expression did not change. "Then we proceed as planned. The evidence is already distributed. The investigations are already started. When he arrives, he will discover he has already lost. He just does not know it yet. And if his men come, if it turns into a fight, then we fight," Sarah said simply. "But we fight knowing we have already won where it matters, in the courts, in the newspapers, in the records that cannot be erased." They spent the evening in quiet preparation, each lost in their own thoughts about what the next day would bring. As darkness fell, Eleanor found Cole on the porch. "There is something I need to tell you," she said. Cole waited. "Everything I have told you is true, about my uncle, about the evidence, about what he did to me, I know. But there are things I have not told you, things about how I planned this, about what I am carrying, about what happens when Thaddeus comes." Her hand moved unconsciously to her stomach, the padding beneath her dress that created the illusion she had used as armor and disguise. "When this is over, when he is gone, I will tell you everything, the whole truth. No more secrets between us." Cole studied her face, seeing determination there and something else. Something that looked like hope struggling against fear. "Whatever you are hiding, I trust that you have your reasons. I do. But Cole," her voice softened, "I need you to know that while much of what I told you was strategy, my feelings for you are real. That was never part of the plan. What was it then? Unexpected, unwanted at first, because feelings are dangerous when you are trying to stay alive, but real, very real." Cole reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Good, because mine are real too. They kissed as the last light faded, two people bound by law and circumstance, learning what it meant to choose each other freely. Whatever secrets remained between them would be revealed in time. For now, this was enough. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows, carrying with it the promise of storms to come. Tomorrow would bring confrontation and truth and perhaps violence. But tonight they held each other in the darkness, finding comfort in presence and touch. And in the morning, they would face whatever came, together. The morning of reckoning arrived with deceptive calm. The sky was cloudless, the air still, the valley holding its breath as though the land itself understood what was coming. Cole woke before dawn, moving quietly so as not to disturb Eleanor. He descended from the loft where they had slept, finding Sarah already awake in the main room cleaning her rifle with methodical precision. Today, she said without looking up. Today, Cole confirmed. They worked in silence, checking weapons, positioning supplies, preparing for every contingency they could imagine, and several they hoped would not come to pass. Eleanor emerged as the sun cleared the mountains. She was dressed simply, her hair braided back, her face composed. But Cole saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands wanted to shake, but she would not let them. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Ready." Her voice was steady. "After 2 years of planning, after months of running, I am ready for this to end." She moved to the window, looked out at the valley bathed in morning light. "Whatever happens today, I want you to know something. What I came here, seeking shelter, I found home instead." Cole crossed to her, took her hands in his. "And I came here seeking solitude. I found purpose." They stood together, holding on to each other, and the moment knowing it might be the last peace they had for some time. Sarah cleared her throat. "The plan. Let us review it one more time." Eleanor stepped back from Cole, her strategic mind engaging. "Thaddeus arrives at noon. He will come to the house expecting to negotiate. Vincent and his men will be hidden nearby, but we proceed as though he came alone. And then I tell him the truth, that the evidence is already distributed, that federal prosecutors are already building cases, that his empire is already crumbling. That will enrage him," Sarah said. "Yes, which is when he will show his true nature, make threats, perhaps try violence, and we will have witnesses." She looked at Cole. "Marshal Hewitt should arrive by mid-morning. Vincent sent him a telegram with the details after he delivered my message to Thaddeus. Tom will be here to witness whatever happens and to make arrests if needed." "If he comes," Cole said quietly. "If he believed the message, if he is willing to help." "He will come," Eleanor said with certainty. "Some debts take years to repay, but good men do not forget them." They fell silent, each processing the fragile plan that relied on timing and trust, and the hope that justice might prevail over power. At 10 in the morning, a rider appeared on the southern road. Cole's hand moved to his rifle, but Eleanor touched his arm. "Wait, that is not Thaddeus." As the rider drew closer, Cole recognized the bearing, the way the man sat his horse with the easy confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime in the saddle. Tom. Marshal Thomas Hewitt was older than Cole remembered, gray threading through his dark hairlines, carved deeper around his eyes. But he still moved with purpose, still carried himself with the quiet authority that had made him one of the most respected lawmen in Wyoming. He reined in before the porch, his gaze moving from Cole to Eleanor to Sarah, assessing the situation with practiced efficiency. "Cole," he said, his voice exactly as Cole remembered. "Been a long time. 3 years." Tom dismounted, tied his horse. "You look good. Alive suits you better than I expected." "Despite everything," Cole smiled. "You got Sarah's telegram." "I did. And I have some news you will want to hear." He pulled a letter from his coat, handed it to Cole. "Anna sends her regards." Cole's hands shook as he took the letter. "She is alive, more than alive, thriving, married to a good man, running a boarding house in Oregon, helping other women who come west looking for new starts." Tom's expression softened. "When she heard I was coming here, she insisted on writing to you. Said you gave her life back and she wanted you to know she never forgot." Cole read the letter quickly, Eleanor reading over his shoulder. Anna's words were simple and profound, thanking him for saving her, telling him she had testified to federal prosecutors 3 weeks ago, providing everything she remembered about Marcus Brennan's trafficking network. She ended, "You gave me my life back, Deputy Hartley. I hope someday you can reclaim yours. You deserve it." Cole folded the letter carefully, feeling something tight in his chest begin to loosen. She testified. She did. Tom leaned against the porch railing, and her testimony, combined with evidence from other sources, is bringing down the entire operation, Marcus Brennan's family included. He looked at Cole directly. "The charges against you are being dropped. Your badge is being reinstated. Full exoneration. Back pay, everything. You are a free man, Cole Hartley." The words hung in the air too large to fully comprehend. Sarah spoke quietly from the doorway. "Does this mean you are here officially?" "As a U.S. Marshal, I am." Tom's voice took on formal tone, "which is convenient because I understand we are expecting company. A man named Thaddeus Ashford wanted in connection with murder, embezzlement, and conspiracy." Eleanor stepped forward. "You know about my uncle, federal prosecutors briefed me yesterday. They have been building a case for weeks based on evidence that was anonymously provided. Evidence that points to a pattern of corruption and violence stretching back over a decade." Tom met her eyes. "They want him alive to stand trial. But if he resists arrest, if he threatens anyone here, I am authorized to use whatever force is necessary." "He will resist," Eleanor said. "He will not go quietly. Then we will be ready." They spent the next hour positioning themselves. Tom took a position in the barn with a clear line of sight to the house. Sarah remained in the loft with her rifle. Cole stayed on the porch with Eleanor, visible and apparently alone. At 10 minutes before noon, the sound of horses carried across the valley. Thaddeus Ashford arrived precisely on time, riding a magnificent chestnut horse and dressed as though attending a business meeting rather than a confrontation. But he did not come alone. Despite the agreement, despite Eleanor's ultimatum, 4 men accompanied him. They fanned out as they approached professionals taking strategic positions around the property. Vincent Cross was among them, his face unreadable, as he took position near the barn. Eleanor stood from where she had been sitting on the porch steps. Cole remained beside her rifle, held loosely but ready. Thaddeus dismounted with practiced ease. He was perhaps 58, well built for his age, with iron-gray hair and the kind of face that spoke of wealth and entitlement. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no, who had bent the world to his will through money and manipulation. "Eleanor," he said, his voice carrying false warmth, "you look well. Frontier life seems to agree with you." "Uncle." Eleanor's voice was ice. "You came alone as requested, did I?" Thaddeus smiled. "I suppose that depends on your definition of alone." He made a gesture, and his 4 men became more visible, no longer pretending to be casual observers. "You said you would come alone," Eleanor said, her voice steady, despite the betrayal. "I lied." Thaddeus spread his hands as though apologizing for a minor social faux pas. "Surely you did not expect me to trust you, my dear. You have become quite resourceful in your time away." He walked closer to the porch, his hired men flanking him at a distance. "Now, you have something that belongs to me. Evidence you claim proves I murdered your parents. I want it. And in exchange, I let you keep your life. You return to Boston. We have you quietly committed to an asylum for your nervous condition, and in a few years, when everyone has forgotten, we arrange a quiet accident." Eleanor laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "You want me to trade evidence of your crimes for a slower death? That is the best offer you can make. It is the only offer, girl." Thaddeus's facade cracked, showing the cruelty beneath. "You are carrying a bastard child. Your reputation is destroyed. You have no money, no connections, no power. You have nothing except the leverage you think you have over me. I have the truth. Truth is worthless without power to enforce it, and you have no power here." "Do I not?" Eleanor reached beneath her dress, and for a moment Thaddeus tensed, perhaps expecting a weapon. Instead, she pulled away the padding that had created the illusion of pregnancy. The carefully sewn fabric came apart in her hands, revealing documents hidden within. Thaddeus went very still. "You lied about the child. I lied about many things." Eleanor's smile was triumphant. "I lied about being helpless. I lied about being broken. And I lied about keeping all the evidence here." She held up the documents. This is only part of what I have. Copies are already with federal prosecutors, with newspapers, with everyone who needs to see them. You are bluffing, am I? Then why did U.S. Marshal Thomas Hewitt arrive in Helena 3 days ago? Why did the Boston Globe receive a package containing evidence of your embezzlement? Why are federal agents currently searching your offices? Thaddeus's face went white, then red with fury. You vindictive little... The gunshot interrupted him. One of his hired men dropped, blood blooming on his shoulder. Sarah stood in the loft with her rifle raised, smoke curling from the barrel. That was a warning, she said calmly. The next one goes through someone's heart. Everything erupted into chaos. The hired men drew weapons. Cole fired, hitting one in the leg. Then Vincent Cross stepped forward, his gun pointed not at Cole, but at Thaddeus's remaining men. Stand down, Vincent commanded. This is over. You work for me, Thaddeus snarled. I work for justice, or at least I am trying to start. Vincent's gun hand was steady. Thaddeus Ashford, you are under arrest for murder, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit human trafficking, and about a dozen other charges that federal prosecutors are currently documenting. You cannot arrest me. You are not a marshal. No, but I am. Marshal Thomas Hewitt emerged from the barn badge glinting in the sunlight, rifle covering Thaddeus and his men. Cole, good to see you are still alive. Tom Cole breathed. The remaining hired men looked between their employer and the marshal, calculating odds and finding them poor. One by one they lowered their weapons, but Thaddeus made a desperate lunge for his horse, his hand reaching for a hidden gun. Sarah's shot rang out. Thaddeus stumbled, his hand moving to his side, where blood spread across his expensive coat. But he kept moving, bringing his weapon up, pointing it at Eleanor. Time slowed. Cole started to move to put himself between Eleanor and the gun, but he was too far away, the angle wrong. Sarah saw it too. She stepped into the line of fire just as Thaddeus's finger tightened on the trigger. The gunshot cracked across the valley, sharp and final. Sarah staggered, her hand moving to her chest, where blood bloomed dark and spreading across her dress. Her rifle fell from nerveless fingers. She looked down at the wound with something like surprise, then up at Cole with something like peace. She collapsed. Cole fired twice more, both shots finding Thaddeus. The man who had destroyed Eleanor's life dropped to his knees, then fell forward into the dust. Vincent Cross moved quickly, kicking away Thaddeus's weapon, securing the remaining hired men. But Cole was already moving, dropping to his knees beside Sarah, where she lay on the ground that was already muddy with her blood. Eleanor was there too, pressing her hands against the wound, even though they both knew it was useless. The bullet had gone through her chest, too close to the heart. Too much damage to survive, even with a doctor standing beside her. Sarah, Cole said, his voice breaking. Sarah, stay with me. Her eyes found his still clear despite the pain. Her lips curved into a small smile. I believe you now, she whispered. About Marcus. About the girl. About all of it. I am sorry I came here wanting you dead. Do not talk. We will get you to a doctor. No. Her hand found his, gripped with surprising strength. This is right. I spent 3 years wanting revenge. Now I die choosing justice. That is enough. She looked past Cole to where Eleanor knelt, tears streaming down her face. Take care of him, Sarah said, her voice fading. And name your daughter after someone who chose right in the end. I will, Eleanor whispered. I promise. Sarah's eyes moved back to Cole. Tell Tom, tell the marshal, that I helped, that I chose the right side. I will tell him. Good. Sarah's breath rattled. Marcus would have hated that. Me helping the man who killed him? I think that is the best revenge I could have asked for. She smiled once more, then her eyes went distant, looking at something beyond their sight. Her hand went slack in Cole's. Sarah Brennan, widow of a monster seeker of truth, died in the dust of Montana, with the man she had come to kill holding her hand, and the woman she had helped save weeping beside her. Cole closed her eyes gently. Around them, Marshal Hewitt was securing Thaddeus's men. Vincent Cross stood with his gun still drawn, tears running silent down his face for a woman he had known only briefly, but who had shown him what courage looked like. Eleanor wrapped her arms around Cole from behind, pressed her face against his shoulder, and wept for Sarah's sacrifice. The sun continued its path across the sky, indifferent to human loss. A hawk circled overhead, calling its lonely cry. In the silence that followed the gunfire, Cole Hartley held the body of a woman who had taught him that redemption sometimes looked like standing in front of a bullet meant for someone else. He would remember her always. They all would. Marshal Hewitt knelt beside Thaddeus's body, checking for signs of life. He looked up, met Cole's eyes, shook his head. "He is gone." "Good," Eleanor said, her voice empty of emotion. "Let him be gone." Vincent Cross supervised as his former employer's men were secured and disarmed. When it was done, he approached Eleanor and Cole, where they still knelt beside Sarah's body. "I am sorry," he said. "I should have stopped him, should have seen what he was planning." "You chose the right side when it mattered," Eleanor said. "That is all anyone can ask." Vincent looked down at Sarah. "I did not know her well, but she was braver than most people I have known, braver than me." "Then honor her memory," Cole said, standing. "Use what you learned here. Become someone who fights for justice instead of serving corrupt men." "I intend to." Vincent straightened. "I am resigning from the Pinkertons, going to law school. Someone needs to fight these battles properly." "That is good," Eleanor said. "You will make a fine lawyer." They buried Sarah 2 days later on a hill, overlooking the valley, beneath a cottonwood tree that would shade her grave in summer and stand bare sentinel in winter. Marshal Hewitt spoke words over her, formal and proper. Vincent Cross added his own, quiet and personal. Eleanor read a passage from Scripture that spoke of greater love having no one than laying down their life for their friends. Cole said nothing aloud, but he stood at her grave long after the others had returned to the house, and he made promises to the earth and the woman beneath it. He would clear his name as she had helped him do. He would live well as she had not been given the chance to. He would remember that revenge and justice were not the same thing, and that choosing between them defined who you became. The marker they placed was simple. Wood carved with her name and dates, and beneath, Sarah Brennan. She chose justice. The days immediately following the burial passed in a blur of legal proceedings and emotional reckoning. Marshal Hewitt stayed at the ranch for 3 days, taking detailed statements, documenting everything. He was thorough and fair, his presence a reminder that justice, when properly served, was worth the wait. On the second evening, he sat with Cole on the porch after Eleanor had retired. "I owe you an apology," Tom said without preamble. "For what? For not fighting harder 3 years ago, for letting you run instead of standing beside you against Marcus Brennan's family. You saved my life by warning me. That is more than most would have done. It was not enough." Tom's voice was heavy. "I should have found Anna myself, should have protected her testimony, should have made sure the truth came out. You did what you could in an impossible situation." Cole leaned back in his chair. "And now you are here finishing what you started. That is all anyone can ask." Tom nodded slowly. "Your badge will be officially reinstated within the month. Full exoneration, back pay, the works. And if you want your position back, the territory would be lucky to have you. I will think about it." Tom understood that some decisions took time. He departed the next morning with his prisoners, headed for Helena and the trials that would follow. Vincent Cross stayed an extra day, helping repair damage from the gunfight, his presence a quiet attempt at atonement. On his last evening, he spoke with Eleanor privately. "Thank you," he said, "for showing me that family is not just blood, that it is the people who stand beside you when everything falls apart. You always have a place here," Vincent Eleanor told him, "if you need it." He rode away the next morning, headed for a future built on better foundations than his father had laid. And then finally Cole and Eleanor were alone. 3 days after the confrontation, Eleanor found Cole in the barn tending to the horses. She had been quiet since Sarah's burial, processing grief and relief in equal measure. "Cole," she said, "there is something I need to tell you." He set down the brush he had been using, gave her his full attention. "The pregnancy. It was never real." "I know." Eleanor blinked in surprise. "You know, I suspected. The timing never quite made sense. And the way you moved, the way you positioned yourself, it felt strategic rather than natural. And you said nothing. I figured you had your reasons." Eleanor's hands twisted together. "I used the fake pregnancy for protection, for legal standing. and as a hiding place for evidence my uncle could never search without revealing his true nature. She met his eyes. I lied to you, used you, manipulated the situation to serve my purposes. Yes, Cole said simply. You did. And you are not angry. I am... Cole paused, searching for the right words. I am impressed by your strategic thinking, concerned that you felt you had to deceive me, and grateful that you are telling me the truth now. Eleanor released a breath she had been holding. No more lies between us, I promise. Good. Cole pulled her close. Because I want to build something real with you, not based on necessity or deception, but on choice. I want that too. They stood together in the quiet barn, holding on to each other and the promise of a future built on honesty. Then Eleanor pulled back slightly, her expression shifting to something uncertain, although she said carefully, while the first pregnancy was fake, I think, Cole, I think I am actually pregnant now. The words hung between them. You are certain as I can be without seeing a doctor, but the signs are all there. The sickness in the mornings, the exhaustion, the way my body feels different. She laughed, the sound caught between joy and disbelief. I faked a pregnancy to survive. And now, when I no longer need the deception, when we are finally building something real, I find myself actually carrying your child. Cole placed his hand gently on her stomach. How do you feel about it? Terrified. Eleanor's eyes shone, and happier than I have ever been. Then we have time to prepare. Time to make this right. He kissed her forehead. When April, I think, maybe early May. Spring then. New life in the season of renewal. Yes, fitting, is it not? The weeks that followed were quiet, almost eerily so after the violence and tension. They fell into rhythms of work and rest, of healing and planning. Eleanor confirmed her pregnancy with Frau Mueller, the midwife from Benson Creek, who pronounced her healthy and strong. You will do fine, the old woman said in her thick accent. You have the hips for birthing and the will for everything else. In November, news came that federal prosecutors had unsealed indictments against 17 of Thaddeus Ashford's business associates. The trafficking network Marcus Brennan had built was being dismantled piece by piece with Anna's testimony and Sarah's evidence, providing the foundation for justice. Eleanor donated Thaddeus's estate to charities supporting women fleeing abuse. She kept only what had belonged to her parents, using it to rebuild the textile business under new management and ethical practices. Vincent wrote regularly, updating them on his studies and on the trials proceeding against those connected to Thaddeus's crimes. Justice was slow, but thorough. A letter arrived 3 weeks after Sarah's burial, from her lawyer in Wyoming, informing them that she had left what little she owned to the family at Blackwater Ranch, who showed me what family could mean. It was not much. Some money, a few possessions, but tucked inside was a note in Sarah's handwriting, dated the night before the confrontation. If you are reading this, I am dead. Good, I died for something that mattered. Do not mourn me long. Live well instead. That is the only revenge worth taking on death. Esubi. Eleanor cried when she read it. Cole folded it carefully and placed it in the box under the floorboards with his badge and the other artifacts of his past that had led to this strange, painful, beautiful present. Winter came gradually, then all at once. By February, Eleanor was large, with child moving with the careful deliberation of someone carrying precious cargo. Cole hovered protective and anxious until she laughed and told him to stop treating her like she might break. I have survived my uncle, she reminded him. I can survive childbirth. But he worried anyway, because that was what love did. It made you vulnerable in ways nothing else could. March arrived with melting snow and the first hints of green pushing through brown earth. 9 months passed like water flowing over stone, reshaping everything it touched. April arrived with the cautious promise of spring. The snow had begun its retreat from the valley, leaving patches of brown earth and the first brave shoots of grass pushing through winter's remnants. Ice still clung to the shadows where sunlight could not reach, but the air carried a different quality now. Not warmth exactly, but the memory of warmth, the anticipation of it. Cole stood at the window in the gray light before dawn, his daughter asleep in the cradle he had built with his own hands during the long winter months. The wood was smooth from hours of careful sanding, each joint fitted with the precision of a man who understood that some things were worth getting exactly right. Rose Eleanor Hartley had been born 3 days ago on a night when the last snow of winter fell soft and silent outside, while inside Eleanor labored through pain that rewrote Cole's understanding of courage. He had faced armed men without flinching, had killed to save lives, had run from the law across half a territory. But watching Eleanor bring their daughter into the world had humbled him in ways violence never could. The midwife from Benson Creek had attended Frau Muller, an old German woman who had delivered half the babies in the territory and lost count of the number years ago. She had been efficient and kind, her hand steady, even when Eleanor's screams had made Cole want to tear the world apart to stop her pain. But Eleanor had been magnificent, terrifying in her strength, beautiful in her determination, more alive than Cole had ever seen her, even as exhaustion carved shadows beneath her eyes. Now she slept in their bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow, one hand reaching toward the empty space where the baby had lain beside her before Cole had lifted Rose to let her mother rest. The baby stirred in his arms, making the small sounds that preceded waking. Cole lifted her from the cradle, held her against his chest. She was impossibly tiny, impossibly perfect, with her mother's eyes and a grip strong enough to hold his finger captive. "Your grandfather is in prison," he whispered to her. "Well, he was. He died trying to hurt your mother. But he failed. And your mother destroyed his empire to protect you before you were even born." He looked down at Rose's tiny face. "Your father is learning how to be worthy of you both. And Aunt Sarah, who you will never meet, she gave her life so you could exist. So you could grow up free." Rose made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been gas. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl, talking to her again, telling her stories. She should know where she comes from. Eleanor joined him at the window, looked out at the valley covered in patches of snow and emerging green. "A letter came yesterday, from Vincent. Where is he? Still in law school. But he has been helping prosecute the remaining cases against my uncle's associates. He says the last of them will go to trial next month." Good. They stood together, their daughter between them, watching the world wake to spring light. There was peace in this moment. Hard-won, paid for in blood and sacrifice, but real. Cole thought of Sarah's grave on the hill, of Marshal Tom, who had given him back his name, and his future of Vincent, who had chosen justice over blood. He thought of Eleanor, who had arrived broken and revealed herself unbreakable. And he thought of Rose, this tiny life they had created, who would grow up knowing she was loved and chosen and free. The ranch had a new name now painted on a sign by the gate, Redemption Ridge, because that was what they had found here, all of them. Redemption was not a single moment. It was 1,000 small choices, 1,000 tiny victories over the past. That evening, after Rose was asleep and the fire burned low, Eleanor found the marriage certificate they had been given 9 months ago. She unfolded it, read their names, joined in legal binding. "Want to do it again?" she asked. "We are already married, I know. But I want to choose it again, choose you again. Not because I am running or because I need protection, but because I love you and I want to build this life with you." Cole took the certificate, looked at their names. "All right. When you have recovered from childbirth, when spring is fully here, we will ride to Benson Creek and get married properly this time. I would like that." They kissed in the firelight, sealing the promise. The weeks passed in the gentle rhythm of new parenthood. Rose grew, filling out, becoming more alert and responsive. She had Eleanor's eyes, Cole's stubborn chin, and a personality that suggested she had inherited determination from both parents. One morning in late April, Cole stood on the porch watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose. Eleanor joined him, Rose sleeping in her arms. "Do you ever regret it?" Eleanor asked. "All of this. Marrying a stranger, fighting her battles, turning your peaceful ranch into a battlefield." "Every day," Cole said. Eleanor's face fell until she saw his smile. "Every day I wake up grateful that you stepped off that stagecoach, that you chose me, that we survived everything that tried to destroy us." He pulled her close, careful of the baby between them. "No regrets, Eleanor, not a single one." She kissed him, deep and sure. "Good, because I plan to give you many more years to potentially develop some." They stood together on the porch of Redemption Ridge, watching the valley wake to spring. Somewhere in Boston, a textile empire had been rebuilt under new leadership turned toward ethical purposes. Somewhere in Helena, Vincent Cross was learning how to fight injustice within the system. Somewhere in Oregon, Anna was helping other women find the freedom she had been given. And here on a ranch in Montana, two people who had been broken by violence were raising a daughter in peace. The past would always be with them. Cole would always carry the weight of killing Marcus Brennan, justified or not. Eleanor would always bear the scars of her uncle's cruelty. They would wake sometimes to nightmares, would flinch at unexpected sounds, would carry the damage that trauma leaves in its wake. But they would carry it together. And Sarah's grave on the hill would remind them always of the price that had been paid for their freedom, of the woman who had chosen justice over revenge and paid with her life. Cole looked at Eleanor, at Rose, at the life they had built from wreckage and courage. This, he thought, was worth every moment of fear and doubt. Worth the running and the hiding and the terrible choice to pull a trigger and change everything. Because it led here, to this moment, to this family, to this peace. The baby woke, crying softly. Eleanor adjusted her, began to nurse. Cole wrapped his arms around them both, sheltering his family against the morning chill. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of new grass and possibility. Inside, warmth and hope and hard-won peace created shelter against whatever storms might come. The story could have ended a dozen different ways, with bullets and blood, with Eleanor dead and Cole hanged, with all of them destroyed by the powerful men who wanted them silenced. But it did not end that way. It ended with a family standing together on a porch as spring replaced winter, with a baby nursing peacefully in her mother's arms, with two people who had chosen each other not once but twice, learning what it meant to build rather than run. It ended with redemption, not perfect, not without scars or sacrifice, but real and hard-won, and theirs. Cole thought of Sarah's final words, "Do not mourn me long, live well instead. That is the only revenge worth taking on death." And so they would. They would live well. They would raise their daughter with love and honesty. They would honor Sarah's memory by choosing justice every day. They would build something beautiful from the ashes of violence. Eleanor smiled at him across the small space, reading his thoughts in his expression. "No regrets?" she asked again. "No regrets," he confirmed. The sun climbed higher, flooding the valley with light. A new day, new season, a new chapter. They turned together and walked back into the house, into the life they had fought so hard to claim. Behind them, the valley stretched vast and beautiful, indifferent to human joy and sorrow, simply existing in the moment. But for Cole and Eleanor Hartley, for their daughter Rose, this valley was not indifferent. It was home, it was sanctuary, it was redemption, and that made all the difference.